Humanity has always sought companionship in the cosmos. We build colossal dishes to scan the heavens, listening for a whisper, a single coherent note in the great, silent symphony of space that might finally tell us we are not alone. My job, for the better part of my life, has been the opposite. I wasn't a listener. I was a watcher, a janitor of the void, cleaning up the messes others left behind. My name is Eva Rostova, commander of the salvage vessel Magellan. In the lexicon of space exploration, there are names that are spoken only in hushed tones, names that have become modern myths, digital ghosts haunting the star lanes, the Mary Celeste, the Patriot, the Roanoke. But for those of us in the deep space recovery and salvage trade, one name eclipsed them all, a legend wrapped in a vacuum-sealed enigma, the Odyssey. She was humanity's first true interstellar vessel, a glorious, cathedral-like ship powered by a highly experimental Alcubierre drive. Her mission was simple in concept and breathtakingly audacious in scale, a 30-year round trip to Proxima Centauri, a test of humanity's reach, a bold stride into the galactic neighborhood. She left Earth in 2142 with a crew of 12 hand-picked pioneers, a ship brimming with hope, and the collective eyes of a unified world upon her. And then, a week later, she vanished, just as she was scheduled to perform her first FTL jump near the edge of the solar system. All contact was lost. It wasn't a catastrophic failure that sprayed debris across the system. It was a sudden, absolute, and terrifying silence. No distress call. No final, garbled transmission. No energy signature from a failed drive. The Odyssey and her crew simply ceased to be. For 30 years, she was a ghost, a cautionary tale whispered to rookie pilots, a multi-trillion-dollar line item written off as a tragic, unsolved loss. Until yesterday. My crew consists of 3 others, a small, tightly knit family bound by long rotations and shared risk. Sam, our gruff but brilliant engineer, a man who could coax life out of a dead reactor with little more than a wrench and a string of well-chosen curses. Dr. Aris Thorne, our quiet and methodical xenolinguist and science officer, a man more comfortable with ancient symbols and theoretical physics than with small talk. And Jian, our young, sharp-eyed pilot, whose reflexes were as fast as the ship's nav computer. We work the lonely, profitable lanes of the outer rim, towing derelict freighters and scavenging asteroid mining equipment. It's a dirty, quiet, and predictable life. We were charting a new debris field beyond the Kuiper Belt, a graveyard of failed mining ventures, when the alert chimed. It wasn't a standard SOS. It was an old, archaic emergency beacon, a digital signature so obsolete it took Cassandra, our ship's AI, a full 10 seconds to cross-reference it. Jian's voice, usually a steady baritone, was a whisper of disbelief from the cockpit. Commander, you need to see this. The ID code, it's the Odyssey. There's no mistake. The bridge of the Magellan fell into a silence so profound I could hear the faint hum of the inertial dampeners. It was impossible. Utterly and completely impossible. We were in a sector of space, hundreds of millions of kilometers from its last known position. The ship had no business being here. To find it here, by chance, was like finding a single specific grain of sand on all the beaches of the world. But there it was, drifting silently in the void, a pale sliver against the backdrop of the Milky Way. Visually, she was pristine. Not a single micrometeoroid pockmark on her sleek, white hull. Her lights were off, her engines cold, her sensor arrays inert. She was a perfect, silent ghost ship, a museum piece preserved in the vacuum. We matched her velocity and began our slow, cautious approach. Every protocol, every instinct honed by years in the salvage trade, screamed that this was fundamentally wrong. Ships don't just reappear after 30 years in perfect condition. They decay. They get battered. They die. No radiation, no energy leaks, Sam reported from his engineering station, his brow furrowed in a deep, skeptical frown. She's as cold as a tomb, but her life support systems, Commander, They're on. Minimal power, drawing from the emergency reserves, but they're active. Air is circulating. Life support. After 30 years, my blood ran cold. That meant one of two things. Either the crew was still somehow alive, or something else was keeping the systems running. I wasn't sure which possibility was more terrifying. We docked, the hiss and clank of our airlock, connecting to the Odyssey, sounding like a profanity in the sacred silence. The boarding party was me, Sam, and Dr. Thorne. Gian would remain on the Magellan, our lifeline, our one-way ticket out if things went sideways. We suited up, the familiar process a small comfort against the rising tide of dread. Our helmet lights cut sharp, white cones through the darkness of the docking tube. "Let's make this quick," I said over the comms, my voice steadier than I felt. "Scan for survivors, secure the ship's log, and get out. Standard sweep pattern. Nobody wanders off. Is that clear?" A chorus of "Clear, Commander," was my reply. The inner airlock door of the Odyssey hissed open. The air that met us wasn't stale or metallic. It was clean, cool, and perfectly breathable, with the faint, sterile scent of recycled oxygen. The emergency lights flickered on as we stepped onto the bridge, casting long dancing shadows that made the empty chairs look like crouching figures. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. A coffee mug sat on a console, a thin film of condensation still visible on its side. A datapad lay open on a chair, displaying a star chart. There was no dust, no sign of a struggle, no indication of a sudden catastrophe. It looked like the crew had just stepped out for a moment. "I don't like this, Eva," Sam muttered, his broad shoulders tense as he moved through the space. He ran a diagnostic tool over a nearby console. It beeped, and he swore under his breath. "The ship's internal chronometer is wrong. It says we're in 2142, the date of its disappearance." "Time dilation from the FTL drive?" Thorne suggested, his voice calm and academic as he ran his own scans. "To lose 30 years? It would have had to be parked on the event horizon of a supermassive black hole," Sam grunted. "And there are no black holes anywhere near here. The fabric of space-time in this sector is as flat as a tabletop." We moved deeper into the ship, our heavy boots echoing in the cavernous, silent corridors. The ship was a time capsule. We found the mess hall. Plates of synthetic food were half-eaten on the tables. A game of chess was frozen mid-move, a white knight poised to capture a black rook. In the medical bay, a hypospray lay on a surgical tray, ready for an injection that never came. A thin, sterile needle gleamed under our lights. It was a perfect snapshot of a single moment, preserved for 3 decades. And there were still no bodies, no signs of violence, no traces of disease. We reached the crew quarters, a circular ring of 12 cabins arranged around a central common area. My heart hammered against my ribs. We had to know. The Odyssey's commander was my great-uncle, Mikhail Rostova, a legend in my family, the man who inspired me to join the service. I keyed open the first door, his door. The room was neat. A well-worn, paper copy of Moby Dick was open on the bed, and sitting on the chair, facing the viewport that looked out into the black, was a figure in a standard ship uniform. "We've got one," I breathed into the comm, a wave of adrenaline and dread washing over me. Sam and Thorne rushed to my side, their helmet lights joining mine to illuminate the still figure. It was a man, his back to us. We approached cautiously, weapons raised slightly. "Mikhail?" I called out, my voice cracking. No response. I reached out a gloved hand and touched his shoulder. He was cold and hard, impossibly hard, like stone. I moved around to face him, my stomach twisting into a knot. My breath caught in my throat. It was a crew member, but his skin. It wasn't skin. It was a pale, smooth, chalky substance, like polished marble. His eyes were open, but they were milky and lifeless, like quartz, staring out into the void with an expression of unreadable serenity. He was a statue. A perfect, impossibly detailed statue of a man, caught in a moment of quiet contemplation. We checked the other 11 cabins. It was the same in every single one. The entire crew of the Odyssey was here, all 12 of them, perfectly preserved, not as bodies, but as intricate, lifeless sculptures. One was laughing, head thrown back. Another was sleeping, a peaceful expression on her face. A third was working at a console, a look of intense concentration etched into her stone features. "What could do this?" Sam whispered, his usual gruffness replaced by raw horror. Thorne was examining the surface of one of the statues with a handheld scanner, his fascination overriding his fear. The material is a silicon-carbon composite, crystalline, but the atomic structure, it's impossibly complex, perfectly ordered. It's as if every single cell in their bodies was simultaneously and instantly replaced. This isn't petrification. This is a conversion, a form of biological data storage. We had to find the ship's log. The answer, the key to this madness, had to be in the Alcubierre drive room, the heart of the ship and its experimental technology. The massive chamber was located at the ship's core, protected by a heavy blast door, sealed for FTL travel. The controls were unresponsive. "No power to the door mechanism," Sam said, prying open a control panel with a grunt. "I'll have to bypass it, feed it power directly from my suit's battery. Give me a few minutes." While Sam yerked, his curses echoing softly over the comms, Thorne and I returned to the bridge. We couldn't access the main log, but we could review the bridge's local sensor logs from the moments before the disappearance. The final entry was a standard pre-jump systems check. Everything was green. Then, a single, anomalous sensor reading appeared 1 second before the signal cut out. "What is that?" Sam's voice crackled over the comm, interrupting our discovery. We met him at the door and stepped inside the chamber. Charged with a static I could feel on my skin, and floating in the very center of the room, in front of the drive, was a thing. It was not one of the statues. It was something else entirely. It was a shimmering, translucent being, vaguely humanoid in shape, but with no discernible features. It was like a heat haze given form, a distortion in the air. It seemed to be made of pure light and warped space, its outline constantly shifting and wavering. It hung there, motionless, an embodiment of the word alien. But the most terrifying part was what surrounded it. The 12 statues of the crew were here. They weren't in their cabins anymore. They were floating in a perfect geometric circle around the translucent being. Their heads bowed slightly, their stone hands clasped as if in prayer. They were arranged like silent, eternal worshippers around their strange, silent god. "My God," Thorne breathed, his voice trembling but filled with an undercurrent of academic wonder. "It's a non-baryonic life form, a creature not made of atoms, but of something else entirely. The neutrino burst? That wasn't a phenomenon. That was its arrival." As he spoke, the translucent being stirred. It slowly turned its featureless head towards us. There was no sound, but a voice filled our minds. It wasn't made of words. It was pure, raw emotion, a wave of feeling so powerful it almost brought me to my knees. It was a feeling of immense, cosmic loneliness, a solitude so profound, so ancient, it felt like the cold of the void itself had taken root in my soul. And then the feeling was replaced by another, a gentle, overwhelming curiosity. The blast door to the drive room slammed shut behind us with a deafening clang of finality. We were trapped. "It's communicating," Thorne said, his voice a strained whisper. "It doesn't use language. It communicates through direct neural resonance. It's projecting its feelings directly into our consciousness." The feeling in our heads shifted again. It was now a sense of offering, a proposition, a gentle, loving invitation. The translucent being slowly raised one of its shimmering, indistinct arms, and the statue of Captain Mikhail Rostova drifted forward, out of the circle of worshippers. The being touched the statue's forehead with a shimmering finger. The stone body began to glow from within with a soft, golden light. The milky, quartz-like eyes cleared, and for a terrifying, impossible second, they seemed to focus. A new feeling flooded my mind, overriding the creature's. It was my great-uncle's consciousness. Not his voice, but his essence. I felt his pride, his sense of duty, his deep, abiding love for his family. And then, I felt his final moment, not of terror, but of a wave of overwhelming, ecstatic peace. A feeling of becoming one with something vast and eternal. A perfect, unending serenity. Then the glow faded. The statue was just a statue again, and it drifted slowly back into the circle. "What was that?" Sam stammered, backing away until he hit the wall. "What did it do?" "It showed us the deal," Thorne said, his face a mask of horrified awe. "It's what it offered the original crew. It's a symbiotic being. It exists in a state of perfect, timeless solitude. It can't die. It can't change. It is eternal, and it is utterly, completely alone. It craves companionship, not conversation, not interaction, but shared existence." "So it killed them," I demanded, my hand tightening on my sidearm. "No," Thorne corrected, his voice hushed. "It elevated them. It offered them an escape from time, from decay, from death. It converted their chaotic biological forms into perfect, stable, crystalline information. It gave them eternity, a permanent, unchanging state of peace, where they could exist forever as a part of its collective consciousness." The being's attention turned to the three of us. The feeling of a gentle, patient, loving offer filled our minds again. It was inviting us to join its circle, to give up our messy, fleeting, painful lives in exchange for perfect, serene, unending existence as statues in its collection of memories. "No," I said, shaking my head, trying to clear the seductive feeling of peace from my thoughts. It felt like a warm blanket on a cold day, a siren song promising an end to all struggle. "No deal." The being seems to tilt its head. The feeling changed. It wasn't hostile. It was confused, deeply, profoundly disappointed, like a child whose offer of a beautiful, perfect toy has been refused. And then the room began to change. The humming vibration we had first felt on the Magellan returned, 1,000 times stronger, a physical force that rattled my bones. The very atoms of the air seemed to buzz. The temporal distortions began again, but they were no longer fleeting flickers. They were violent, wrenching shifts. The walls around us began to flicker, rapidly aging and de-aging. I saw them as brand new, gleaming metal, then as rusted, crumbling ruins, then as glowing, molten energy, all in the span of a single, nauseating second. The creature wasn't attacking us. It was simply letting go. It was losing control of its influence over our reality. Its disappointment, its inability to comprehend our refusal, was causing its hold on our space-time to waver. "It's destabilizing the local timeline," Thorne shouted over the vibrating roar. "It can't comprehend rejection. Its consciousness is so alien that our choice, our desire for a finite life, is a logical paradox it cannot process." My helmet's heads-up display went crazy, a screaming cascade of alerts. Radiation warnings, temporal warnings, atmospheric warnings. I saw Sam flicker, for a moment becoming a gnarled old man with a long white beard. Then a young boy in an apprentice's uniform. My own hands looked skeletal, the bones visible through my gloves, then smooth and unaged. We were being unwritten from reality. "The drive!" I screamed, pointing at the massive Alcubierre device behind the creature. "It brought the creature here. Maybe it can send it back." "It's a long shot, but it's all we have," Sam yelled back, his form flickering violently between ages. He scrambled towards a secondary control console at the edge of the room, fighting against the waves of temporal distortion. "I need to manually activate the FTL Dride's core, a raw, uncontrolled burst. It might create a space-time rift that expels it." As Sam worked, his hands flying across a console that kept changing from new to ancient, the translucent being focused its full attention on me. The feeling it projected was no longer an offer. It was a plea, a desperate, lonely wail that cut through my soul. It was showing me images, feelings, flooding my mind, the heat death of its own universe. Eons spent drifting alone in the great nothing between realities. It saw our chaotic, vibrant, short-lived existence as a paradise of sensation, and all it wanted was to share in it, to preserve it like a butterfly in amber. It didn't understand that its very nature, its eternal stillness, was poison to our fleeting, dynamic reality. I felt a wave of profound pity for the ancient, lonely god trapped in our engine room. But I also felt the fierce, primal instinct to live, to die on my own terms. "Now, Eva," Sam screamed, his face momentarily that of a terrified teenager. He slammed his hand down on the console. The Alcubierre drive roared to life, not with a smooth, engineered hum, but with a shriek of tortured metal and screaming energy. A miniature black hole, a raw, uncontrolled rift in space-time, opened in the center of the drive, right where the creature was floating. The being didn't struggle. It didn't fight. It seemed to accept it. It turned its featureless face to me one last time, and the final emotion it projected was not anger, not fear, but a single pure feeling of gratitude. Perhaps for ending its long solitude, or perhaps for the brief, beautiful, chaotic moment of contact. Then the rift imploded, pulling the creature, the 12 statues of the Odyssey crew, and a huge chunk of the drive itself into nothingness. And then, silence. The vibrations stopped. The temporal flickers ceased. The air settled. The blast door to the drive room hissed open. We were alive. We were whole. We didn't stay another minute. We ran back to the Magellan, a frantic, stumbling retreat through the now truly dead ship, sealed the airlock, and detached from the ghost ship, from the bridge of my own ship. I looked back at the Odyssey. It was no longer pristine. The engine section was a mangled, gaping wreck. It was now truly a derelict, a tomb floating in the void. We fired a single, high-yield torpedo into its power core, watching as the legendary ship disappeared in a silent, clean fireball, taking its impossible secrets with it.